By the time the judge ordered us to split the air fryer, I had already learned how to serve Costco sheet cake with a lawyer present and a straight face. That was weeks after the birthday party, after the candles and the singing, and the "Make-A-Wish, buddy," after the moment the confetti cannon misfired like a wounded kazoo, and I realized the universe has a sense of humor so blunt it qualifies as parody. I am telling this out of order because that is how my memory stores disaster. Backwards, like rewinding a home movie that starts with me signing divorce papers and ends with a bunch of kids in paper crowns taking turns whacking a piñata shaped like a smiling dinosaur that, unknown to me, had a phone wrapped in a napkin tucked inside its cardboard ribs. If you think this sounds like a conspiracy, you have not met a suburban parents' committee in late May, when people treat a 7-year-old's backyard party like the Met Gala. The day started clean and American, a trimmed lawn, a cooler full of sparkling water, the bounce house anchoring the grass like a patriotic cathedral. I wore a dad shirt that my wife Kayla said made me look reliable, which I learned is the word you use when beneath it lives a man you plan to set on fire. My best friend Derek arrived early, the way he always did, bearing a gift that looked like a professional athlete's gym bag and a grin that could sell mattresses. He helped string the "Happy Birthday Mason" banner, and he joked with me like we were still in college and life had not yet acquired the flavor of reheated resentment. I am not going to pretend I did not notice the glances between him and Kayla. I did notice. But if you live long enough in a neighborhood where the homeowners association mails violation notes about your garbage cans, you learn to file suspicious glances under probably nothing. There are whole apps for this, whole threads on the Nextdoor platform where people post blurry photos of a raccoon and call it a home intruder. The suburban brain loves a mystery and hates an answer. Mine especially. Here is the answer I chose that morning. My wife was simply sharing that polite American smile you deploy when you are passing deviled eggs to your husband's best friend. Here is the answer I would choose later. Betrayal, infidelity, toxic love with a splash of Pinterest. I used to think conspiracy theories were for people who collected crystals or owned more than one survival kit. But on that day, I believed, devoutly, that our family was fortified by routines and bedtime stories and the fact that I once built a coffee table using a YouTube video and very little talent. Kayla and I had a life that looked good in photographs. She had a knack for arranging things, throw pillows, grazing boards, the narrative arc of our marriage, and if I am honest, I liked being arranged. Every family has a myth. Ours was that we were the stable one among our friends, the functional unit with a decent credit score and a sensible minivan and a son who could locate his shin guards without swearing. If there were jokes about a cheating wife, they belonged to other people's podcasts, to strangers on the internet that I scrolled past while half-watching late-night reruns. My myth died at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon when the magician hired from a Clark County Classifieds group asked for 2 adult volunteers, and Kayla and Derek raised their hands like synchronized swimmers. The trick involved handcuffs, family-friendly handcuffs, the kind you can buy in bulk for church carnivals, and a silk scarf that, I swear to you, had the pattern of our living room curtains. This is the paranoia speaking, but you know when reality starts lining up so neatly, it becomes an insult. They laughed when the cuffs clicked. The kids laughed. I laughed because what else can you do when your future is slipping its wrists out of a joke? The magician had a stage name, something like Mr. Dynamo, and he made a balloon dog that frightened our actual dog, who took off around the yard in high dramatic circles, and everyone clapped, and the sun kept shining with the brutal optimism of a motivational speaker. After the show, while I sliced cake and made polite conversation about travel baseball, Kayla disappeared. I felt the absence the way you feel a cavity with your tongue. Curious, nagging, impossible to ignore. Derek was gone too, which in retrospect reads like a billboard. At the time, my brain chose another myth. Refilling ice, grabbing napkins, searching for the special candles shaped like a number that Kayla insisted we bought, and I insisted we did not. because the inventory of your life is always an argument waiting to happen. I said I would check the garage. I remember the way the doorknob felt. Warm, ordinary, unremarkable, like the start of every American anecdote that ends with, "And that is the day I realized my life was a sitcom written by a vindictive intern." Someone had stacked moving boxes over the months, even though we were not moving, because suburban garages are museums of intention. My son's new bike leaned against the tool chest, its reflectors winking like little emergency beacons. From behind the stacked boxes came a sound, not vulgar, not even strictly romantic, more like the hushed, stifled giggle of two people who grew up practicing the art of being caught and admired for it. I will spare you the particularities of how the soul rearranges itself in a garage that smells like fertilizer and WD-40. I will not dramatize it because there is no need. The picture is simple. I did not see anything, not then, because the door swung open and our neighbor's toddler toddled in after me, yelling, "Bouncy, bouncy!" And I was forced to retreat because American children have diplomatic immunity at parties. Kayla reappeared minutes later with a tray of lemon bars, and Derek came behind her with the napkins, and I looked from one to the other, and something aged inside me, like wood left in the rain. I do not know why betrayal looks so photogenic when it is happening to someone else, but so embarrassingly ordinary when it is happening to you. The sun does not dim. The music does not scratch to a halt. The universe gives no sign except a small, ridiculous thing. The dinosaur piñata, which had been swaying lazily in the breeze, turned on its string like a weather vane and faced the patio door. Its painted eyes were serene and scolding. If I had been a different man, I might have smashed it right there. Instead, I sang Happy Birthday and made a wish for my son, a wish that felt like begging the sky to choose a different family for tragedy. I am not proud to admit this, but for a few hours I did not want revenge. I wanted to rewind. I wanted the myth back. Then the piñata broke, and a phone I did not recognize, tumbled out into a spray of Smarties and stale confetti. Kayla reached for it the way a person reaches for a dropped infant. Derek reached, too, because of course he did. The children cheered for candy, and I laughed, and the laugh sounded like a bell tolling the hour. There is an underground economy in every suburb, and it is not just the yard sale circuit or the chain of babysitters who have more power than the mayor. It is a marketplace of information, of whispers traded between soccer practices and book clubs, of tiny truths paid for with casseroles and rides to the airport. The day after the party, that economy delivered me a package of revelations on my doorstep, disguised as leftover cupcakes, and a card from a neighbor who writes like a detective. I do not want to get involved. The card began, which is the American preamble to involvement. But you should know my Ring camera caught something odd yesterday near your garage. The flash drive tucked inside the card was shaped like a dolphin and wore sunglasses. This is what I mean when I say parody. Even the props conspired to make a joke of me. I did not watch the footage at first. I busied myself with laundry and dishes and the complicated choreography of pretending everything is fine so that your child believes it. Mason built a fort in the living room out of the couch cushions and declared it a no grown-ups zone unless you brought a password and fruit snacks. Kayla stayed unusually quiet, which meant she spoke in entire paragraphs about very safe topics. Sunscreen, summer schedules, which brand of granola bars the kids liked this week. We are taught in this culture that family means pushing through, that you can duct tape a crack and picture it as character. I am not against duct tape. I have held half my life together with it, but there is a sound that marriage makes when infidelity taps it with a spoon. You cannot unhear that ring. At 11 in the morning, while a cartoon shouted about teamwork in the background, I slid the dolphin into my laptop and clicked the only file on the drive. The video opened on a view of my driveway, a neat rectangle of suburban virtue. For several minutes nothing happened, and I started to feel not relief but embarrassment, as if I had purchased mystery where there was only yard. Then the garage door rose a foot, paused, and rose another foot, and under the creeping shadow came two pairs of legs that could have belonged to any two people in the city. I knew those shoes, though. The woman's sandals were the ones Kayla had bought on sale after telling me she was done with impractical shoes. And the man's sneakers were the kind Derek wore when he was trying to convince you he had just come from the gym even when he had not. They slipped out to the side yard, and the garage door closed again like a stage curtain. The clip was short, 60 seconds max, and yet I felt like I had watched an epic drama that opened with the words, "Based on a true story, and also your nightmares." There is a point where heartbreak turns into performance art. You begin to narrate your pain in sentences designed for an audience you cannot yet see but can already imagine. A jury, a judge, a podcast listener on a treadmill nodding along to your tale of a cheating wife sleeping with your best friend while your child blew out candles. I hated that performance. I also leaned into it like it would save me. I called my friend Taylor, who is not an attorney, but is an expert in sounding like one. He told me to slow down, to document everything, to avoid the catharsis of yelling until the paperwork had a spine. I wanted revenge, but not the kind you get in a fever, more like the meticulous spreadsheet kind that American courts respect. Taylor texted a list titled "Do Not Do," which included "Do not set the gym bag on fire," "Do not deliver a monologue in the produce aisle," and "Do not under any circumstances give them the satisfaction of seeing you lose your mind." The last one felt unfairly optimistic. Through all of this, the birthday party footage kept replaying in my head, glitching as memory does, cutting from the magician's handcuffs to the piñata phone to the precise angle of Kayla's smile. Smile language is its own dialect. I could translate most of hers after 10 years. The addition I had seen lately was complicated, not the "I love you, but I need you to pick up dry cleaning" smile, nor the "our son did something adorable and terrifying" smile, but a new curve that whispered an exit strategy. You can read a lot into a look when you are disintegrating. You can also miss the simplest sentence in the room. The simplest sentence arrived via my son, who emerged from his fort with a king's seriousness and asked, "Are you and Mom fighting?" In America, we train our children to decode the weather of adults. We teach them storm patterns and safe words. I knelt and told him the truth in a way that would not haunt him, that Mom and Dad were having a hard time, and that none of it was his fault, and that I loved him beyond math. He nodded like a soldier receiving orders and asked if he could have another cupcake. Later, when Kayla came back from a walk to clear my head, we sat at the kitchen island, the one we picked after an argument about quartz versus granite that lasted 3 days and 2 couples' therapy sessions. In this house, even the countertops were déjà vu. I am not going to script the conversation in detail because there is no translation that makes it kinder. She started with the words everyone starts with, the phrases human beings for generations have lifted in shaky arms when their cheating has been revealed. It was a mistake. It was not what you think. It was confusing. It was only once. It was more than once. I am not happy. I have not been happy. I do not know who I am. You do not see me. I am sorry. If you had asked me before that day, I would have said I preferred blunt truth to soft lies. In practice, blunt truth feels like a truck. I heard Derek's name just once, and it sounded like a utensil clattering into a garbage disposal. I heard best friend and family in the same sentence, and felt a piece of my vocabulary go dark. Something in me wanted to stage this like satire. I wanted to summon a laugh track that could make the pain tolerable. I wanted to point to the visual irony of our framed wedding vows sitting 6 feet from where she told me she had kissed my best friend in the garage while the magician wrangled balloon animals. But the moment did not want parody. It wanted a recorded statement. So I asked Kayla, in the politest legalese my friend's text messages could provide, to place her phone on the counter. She did. It buzzed like a trapped insect. There it was on the lock screen, a message preview from a number labeled with an old joke name they thought made them clever. The words were ordinary enough to evade scandal if you did not know the code, which I did not, yet my stomach understood what my brain could not parse. I asked for the passcode. She entered it. That is how the plot turned from suspicion to proof. The threads were in there, and they did not require detective work. They required literacy, out-of-context phrases attached to in-context timestamps, emojis doing more damage than any confession, arrangements disguised as errands, nostalgia disguised as fate. I scrolled and felt like I was holding a lab report for a disease with my name on it. You cannot disinfect this. You can only quarantine. That night I slept on the couch, not out of rage, but because the bed felt like a museum exhibit titled Before Lies. I woke to a silent house and a text from Derek that read, "Can we talk like men?" which translated to, "Can we negotiate the terms of my guilt?" I did not reply. In the morning I brewed coffee so strong it could qualify as a lawsuit, and I emailed a family attorney whose website promised clarity, dignity, and fierce advocacy. Her assistant offered a consultation on Tuesday at 2:30. I wrote it on the family whiteboard like an orthodontist appointment, and then I packed a bag for my son's soccer practice. Because betrayal and sports schedules coexist like weird roommates in this country. If you are waiting for the epic meltdown, the wild revenge, the theatrical confrontation that ends in a slow clap, you will be disappointed. My revenge arrived in a colder temperature. I called the Homeowners Association and reported the unauthorized balloons still tangled in our oak tree, then stood in the yard and watched a volunteer in a bright safety vest take photos like a crime scene technician. I canceled the streaming service I paid for because Kayla loved the murder documentaries. I set new passwords on everything that mattered and left the rest to rot. I took the dinosaur piñata head, the only piece left intact, and placed it on a shelf in the garage facing the door. It looks at me when I get out of the car, as if to say, "You wanted answers in that room. You got them. Now what?" The "now what" is the part I am telling out of order. It leads to courtrooms and custody percentages and a judge who will quote the word stability like a preacher pronounces grace. It leads to paperwork that reads like an obituary for a family. It leads, paradoxically, to laughter, the kind that erupts when a friend brings over a terrible movie and a box of tacos and you realize your heart can still take a punch and keep rhythm. It is a long road from birthday candles to unboxing yourself from the myth you married. But if there is a map, it begins here, with a man at a kitchen island, staring at a phone he never owned, learning that the phrase "cheating wife" fits into his biography like a borrowed suit that somehow knows your measurements. It is not the suit I wanted. It is the one I am wearing while I learn to be a father who refuses to let betrayal write the rest of his story. The day the truth became an exhibit, I wore the same plaid shirt from the party like a uniform for recognition. I wanted the judge, the clerk, and the fluorescent lights to understand continuity. People like to say betrayal happens all at once, but in America it often arrives as paperwork, time stamps, and a folder named evidence that sits on your desktop like a quiet volcano. The attorney sat across from me in a conference room that had framed photographs of bridges, which felt pointed, and said we would begin with the deposition. The court reporter clicked her machine like a woodpecker in a haunted forest. It smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and the ambition of mid-level professionals who drink their coffee like a sport. Kayla walked in first with a calm that looked practiced, the calm of a person who has trained for fire drills. Derek followed, wearing a jacket that wanted to be taken seriously. There is a strain of parody in this country that is not written, it is lived. We all took our seats in a rectangle of civilized destruction. We began not at the beginning, because I refused to give them that structure, but at the moment the piñata burst and a phone fell out like a rabbit from a second-rate top hat. The attorney asked the question that had been glowing in my skull since it happened. Why was there a phone inside the party decoration? Kayla said she did not know. Derek said he did not know either, but he said it with the theatrical puzzlement of a man who believes confusion can be a brand. The attorney slid a photograph across the table. It was a still frame from the neighbor's Ring camera, and it showed the shadowed line of the garage opening in stages, and it showed 2 sets of legs in a choreography that said urgency with a side of carelessness. We spoke about it the way Americans speak about weather events. We charted its path. We measured its wind speed. We named it. When the attorney asked about messages, the conference room filled with the tinny sound of screenshots sliding against dignity. There is nothing quite like reading your own life in blue and gray bubbles while strangers evaluate your tone. Kayla stared at the table and tried to speak the language of exception. This was not the whole story. That was not the right context. Those were not the feelings she thinks she felt. Derek tried a counter-programming strategy built on nostalgia, the same one that had seduced me in dorm rooms and barbecues. He said we were brothers once. He said our history deserved mercy. He said the word family as if it were a key that could open the safe and pull the gold from the mess. I listened to him narrate his innocence like a TED Talk about unfortunate impulses, and I realized that conspiracy theories thrive for a reason. Reality sometimes asks too little of our imagination. It felt easier to believe there was an underground council of suburban puppeteers who had arranged the handcuffs trick, who had planted the phone in the dinosaur, who had engineered a bounce house malfunction at the exact moment my internal myth collapsed, than it was to accept that 2 ordinary adults chose cheating because it was available. The attorney moved us backward to the magician. Mr. Dynamo, whose legal name turned out to be Eugene, was deposed by phone from a vape shop parking lot. He said the handcuffs were a standard prop. He said he had performed the trick at church fundraisers and once on the steps of a courthouse during a memorial service for a beloved teacher. He said he had no knowledge of any infidelity, and then he said he remembered a woman whispering, "Make it look real," which raised every hair on my arms and invited the entire cast of my private conspiracy drama back onto the stage. Make it look real. The phrase was a pry bar. Suddenly every look at the party, every small absence, every casual joke bent into a shape with fangs. Even the lemon bars now felt like evidence. When Kayla finally spoke about the garage, her voice had the steady rhythm of a person who understood the only path out was through. She said she had kissed Derek. She said she had done worse than kiss Derek. She said it had happened before the party, and not only during the party, that what began as a laugh with a glass of wine in a laundry room months ago had evolved into a schedule with rules. She said it was a mistake, and then she corrected herself and said it was a series of choices, which was the kindest thing she offered me that day, because truth is the only rope I have found that holds at all. She said she had been my partner, and then she had been my opponent, and she did not know when her face changed teams. It was a small mercy that the court reporter recorded it forever, that somewhere there would be an official document where a cheating wife explained her turn without poetry. I learned things you do not put into podcasts because people will accuse you of embellishing. I learned that the gym bag Derek brought to the party contained not just a remote control car for my son, but a change of clothes and travel-size deodorant. I learned that Kayla had created a Notes app folder with lies that corresponded to events in our calendar, a spreadsheet of infidelity that could have been audited. I learned that our son had walked into the garage once before, and they had talked themselves out of becoming the villains in his eyes by handing him a popsicle and a new Lego set. Sitting there, it felt less like betrayal and more like a heist where I was the bank that had been held at gunpoint by people I had lent money to. When I spoke, I did it slowly, because the only way I could claim any dignity was to move at half speed. I described the birthday song and the smell of frosting and the sound of the bounce house fan humming like a desperate prayer. I described the way the phone fell, how Kayla and Derek reached for it at the same time, how their hands touched, how it was so small a moment you could miss it if you were not looking for it, and how I would now always be looking for that small moment in any room I enter. I said revenge in a sentence, and it felt like a torch. I said toxic love, and it felt like a diagnosis. I said family, and it felt like a synonym for broken architecture. I said cheating and infidelity and cheating wife, because the story needed its own accurate tags. The deposition ended the way all bureaucratic storms end, with everyone standing and pretending to stretch while secretly checking for wounds. On the sidewalk outside, Derek tried to say my name the way he used to. I told him to save the syllables. There was nothing left to pronounce. Back at the house, I did something that surprised me. I took down every photograph from the hallway and laid them on the floor like a timeline. I looked at my life in rectangles. In one frame, Kayla and I are 19 in sweatshirts at a football game. In another, we stand under a Main Street parade banner holding paper cups of hot chocolate. Then the wedding photo, 8 by 10, the vows captured in an angle of light that flattered both of us. Then the hospital bracelet from the day our son arrived, taped behind a shadow box with his first hat. I sat with them until it got dark, until the snapshots turned into reflective surfaces. There I was, the man whose narrative had become a funhouse, staring back at himself and trying not to flinch. That night, a wind came through the neighborhood with the stubborn energy of a chorus. The oak tree knocked against the siding, and the dinosaur head in the garage seemed to shift on its shelf, angling toward me as I locked the car. For one irrational second, I believed it would speak. I half wanted it to testify. Instead, the world stayed silent, which felt almost merciful. The next day would be court, a room where words could actually move furniture. I slept like a man who knew that in the morning he would be asked to state his name. For the record and answer questions about the day, a birthday party turned into a courtroom, and a courtroom turned into the stage where I finally accepted that conspiracy was not an explanation, it was a comfort, and I was done being comforted by anything except the truth. On Tuesday at 2:30, the courtroom smelled like old wood and new rules. The judge had a face built for concluding arguments. I took my seat and remembered the air fryer, the split custody of objects that will one day be the punchlines of this era of my life. The attorney squeezed my shoulder and said the word dignity. Across the aisle sat Kayla with her hair tucked behind one ear in a way that used to signal intimacy, and now signaled strategy, and Derek in a suit that tried to apologize without words. I had promised myself that if I used tropes like revenge or betrayal in my head, I would translate them into actions that could be notarized. So I did the least cinematic thing imaginable. I told the truth. I told the whole story out of order, the way it happened to me, because a reverse chronology is honest about how grief arrives. I described the birthday candles, the piñata phone, the garage door, the Ring camera, the depositions, the anxious parade of groceries and laundry, and bedtime math facts in the middle of collapse. I said cheating wife and did not look away. I said infidelity as if it were a chemical that had spilled and required a cleanup crew with reflective vests. Kayla cried in the way that turns some juries into mercy statues. The judge listened without visible judgment, the way people in that job must, and then asked questions that pinned events to specific boards like butterflies. What did you know and when did you know it? What did you say and when did you say it? What did you do and does it meet the standard of a parent who can provide stability? I had rehearsed those answers in my kitchen while the coffee maker breathed, and there was a relief in finally speaking them in a room where syllables have consequences. When the judge asked about my son, I felt every muscle in my back rearrange to hold up a roof. I told the court that the word family had not died for me. It had changed shape. Family now meant picking up from soccer and packing lunches and showing up to a school performance with the kind of attention that feels like prayer. It meant I would never use the phrase toxic love as a joke again. It meant I would keep our routine so solid that he could swing from it like a monkey bar without fear of falling. The judge awarded temporary physical custody to me during the school week with shared weekends, which felt like hearing my own name called at a graduation I had not wanted to attend. There would be a full hearing later. There would be mediation. There would be the administrative epic that follows any American implosion, but in that moment it felt like a sentence had been commuted. Derek did not matter to the court very much. Best friends are not a legal category. He mattered to me in the way ghosts matter. He would be the cautionary tale in a lecture I would give myself whenever nostalgia tried to knock on the door with a six-pack and a porch story. For a while I thought my revenge would arrive as a dramatic flourish. I even drafted a speech in my head for the end of this saga, the kind that would go viral among men who buy tactical flashlights. But something quieter took up residence. I joined a support group that meets in a church basement with coffee that tastes like penance. The men there speak in the slow present tense of survivors. One sells HVAC systems. One teaches ninth grade history. One used to repair guitars and now delivers packages and knows every dog on his route by name. We do not trade statistics. We trade sentences like stones we carry in our pockets to remind ourselves of weight. A guy named Emilio said the phrase that reset my direction. He said the only revenge that does not smell like gasoline is a steady life. It landed like clean rain. I specialized in steady. I made breakfasts that looked like competency. I learned to braid a ridiculous friendship bracelet my son wanted to give to his favorite midfielder. I handled the calendar with the reverence I once reserved for anniversaries. I replaced the living room couch because it had too many memories embedded in the cushions, and I painted the garage a bright white like a declaration. The dinosaur head stayed on the shelf because I have a sense of humor and a working memory. I took my son camping at a state park where the ranger gave a lecture on constellations and how sailors used to navigate by something that did not know or care about their private catastrophes. We lay on our backs on a picnic table, and he asked if I was still mad. I said I was a little mad and a lot determined. He said that sounded like a superhero. I said it sounded like a father. In the quiet hours when the house felt like a repaired boat, I wrote down what I wanted from the future, and the list surprised me. I wanted the ability to stand at a school carnival without translating every laugh into a code. I wanted to sit in the bleachers next to other parents and talk about cleats. I wanted to plant a tomato and watch it stubbornly insist on becoming itself. I wanted to stop using the phrase cheating wife as a full sentence and return it to a cautionary adjective in a world where most people are trying hard. I wanted to forgive in a way that did not reopen the front door. Kayla and I found a rhythm that looked like accountability. We used a co-parenting app that timestamps every exchange so that nothing floats and everything lands. She apologized in sentences that did not ask for absolution. She showed up for school events with a sadness that I recognized and a focus on our son that I honored. We stood 6 feet apart at soccer practice and cheered for the same goal. The world did not tilt. The conspiracy in my head that predicted a lifetime of sabotage and dramatic exits lost steam. Reality insisted on simple acts stacked like bricks. One day at a pickup, Derek was there across the field, escorted by a silence that belonged to men who have learned what exile feels like in a town of cul-de-sacs. He did not wave. I did not wave. There are stories you simply let end. Months later, the final hearing felt almost procedural. The judge used words like best interests and stability and structure. If the law had a soundtrack, it would be a metronome. When it was over, when the air fryer was mine, and the couch was mine, and the Tuesday pickup was mine, and the word custody had been translated into a calendar that would not surprise us, I went home and did something ceremonial. I took the dinosaur head down from the shelf. I set it on the workbench. I told it, because I am a man who talks to objects now, that it could rest. Then I took a fat black marker and wrote on the inside, in all capital letters, "Thank you for the warning." I will not tell you that every day is clean. Some mornings the smell of lemon cleaner in an office sends me back to the conference room where we dismantled our myth. Some afternoons a car that looks like Derek's moves through an intersection, and I feel my body choose fight or flight like a reflex. But most nights my son reads to me from a paperback about kids who solve mysteries with friendship and teamwork, and I think about how I used to want revenge to look like a headline. Now it looks like a kitchen where the lights are warm and the sink is empty and the homework is done and the calendar is boring. It looks like a father and a boy building a small model of Saturn out of a science kit, trying not to glue their fingers together. It looks like a man who can say betrayal without tasting metal. If there is a moral, it is not that conspiracies are fake and love is real. It is that conspiracies are comfort and love is work. It is that infidelity can burn a house down, and the insurance check is a chance to build something smaller and stronger with exits that actually open. It is that the phrase, cheating wife, will live in my story forever, but not as my title. The title is a longer sentence with my son's name in it, a sentence about learning the constellations and the routes home and the rare joy of an ordinary Tuesday. And if someone at a future barbecue jokes about air fryers and judges and the dark comedy of suburban justice, I will laugh, because parody is part of how we survive. Then I will pass the potato salad and ask if anyone wants another piece of cake, because we are not done celebrating. We are just learning which parties matter.